being harassed, death-threated, demonized, attacked, that more and more what he's written about is coming true. It's very exciting. You can see clips, a compilation with links to his website, his news site, WayneMadsenReport.com, at Infowars.com. Flashback. Investigative journalist broke key speaker Hastert blackmail sex scandal in 2006. Again, investigative journalist broke ex-speaker Hastert blackmail scandal in 2006. In 2006, Hastert was involved with the cover-up of a major sex scandal involving Republican congressmen. And I see a few commenters on YouTube and InfoWars saying, why do we care about some old corrupt weirdo? I'm glad he's been indicted, and this isn't even a story. Who cares? Arrest them all. It isn't about this molding piece of cheese. It's about the fact that they selectively are doing it. Why are they doing it? What does it signify? And does it mean they're about to roll up Boehner and the rest of these guys? This could be a coup against who's left in the Republican Party. And the Republicans could start striking back with all their dirt. This, I think, signifies a major war going on behind the scenes. That's what it generally does. And it just adds to this whole season of craziness. I want to close the book on this and get into some other big stories you're working on, Wayne, but in your gut, your sources, am I onto something here, or what do you think this signifies, or is it rogue FBI agents doing their job? What do you think is happening?
This isn't over yet, Alex. I would be remiss if I didn't add that among the House leadership at the outset of this House page scandal are 3 current U.S. senators who, 2 of them were members of the House at the time. Roy Blunt, who's now a senator from Missouri, Shelley Moore Capito, who's now a senator from West Virginia, and the tutor of the House pages, the tutor, the person in charge of the security of these pages, who apparently was either asleep on the job or knew what was going on and looked the other way, is now a U.S. senator from the state of Nebraska, Ben Sass. You got to be careful how you say that, because it sounds like Ben's ass if you're not. If you're not
So it sounds like whoever runs the stable of these pages ends up getting a lot of power real quick.
Great, you mentioned that. The stabling. That was another thing that I reported on back then, that because the senators have larger staffs, they would bring in a lot of young male staffers and stable them. That was the word that was used at the time, stable them there, where they would then be able to be farmed out over to the House side. In other words, I guess the senators would go over and look and see which one they liked.
Yeah, it's like going to a whorehouse and picking which one you want.
3 senators who were mentioned to me in respect to that were George Allen from Virginia, Rick Santorum from Pennsylvania, and Jim Talent from Missouri.
Unbelievable.
None of them are in the Senate any longer.
Why has this story kind of cooled off? Cover up? Because the Catholic Church thing just keeps coming out. Is every major institution infested with pedos?
Well, look, my first experience with them was when I was with the Navy in 1982. I was the operations officer at a classified Navy facility in Oregon, and the FBI and NCIS, which is now NCIS, it was NIS at the time, came to me and said, look, we need you to help us investigate your commanding officer. I said, for what? They said, he's a kingpin in this child pornography ring, based in where? Chicago, of all places. And he wasn't the only one. He wasn't the only military officer. There were admirals involved. And then, of course, later, in the 80s, we found out how high up it went, right to the White House, which is one of the original FBI agents told me at the time when we were doing a post-mortem on that investigation. He says, this thing goes all the way to the White House. I was shocked.
I talk a lot about this with Joel Scalzi and other people, light side, dark side, and government. Government's not our enemy, but it is filled with cliques of bad guys, cliques of good people. Percentage-wise, and you've been around the block, is the government more corrupt or less corrupt, or do we just know more now and it's the same? And take the FBI. I mean, sometimes the FBI does great things, sometimes it does bad things, sometimes it's political, sometimes it's not. Does it depend on the division? Basically, what's the lay of the land from your research? How many of these people are good? How many are bad?
I think it's getting worse because in the old days, what was the worst they would get a member of Congress on? Well, bribes, taking money. Remember Adam Clayton Powell and people like that. I mean, they were actually good congressmen for their districts, but they, had sticky fingers when it came to money. Well, of course, that's bad, taking money, taking bribes. But now we're into this really bizarre stuff. I mentioned Vitter with the diaper. They call him Diaper Dave, and now this stuff with Hastert and Foley and Larry Craig, Mr. Widestance at the Minneapolis men's room stall, being arrested by an undercover vice cop. This stuff that started in the early 80s with Bob Bauman, the Republican conservative congressman from Maryland who was arrested in a men's room, and it's just gotten worse since. I'm not saying that they didn't have things like this happen in the past, but it certainly was not reported by the press if it was going on. But I think it's more. There's more of this going on now from my vantage point.
Well, the issue I notice is the more fairy-like a congressman is, the more anti-gay they are, and then they get busted, out in a bathroom. And I'm not bashing anybody. I'm just using that term because they act effeminate. They act like the classic thing where you be in a grocery store and say, "Hey, I bet that guy's gay over there." But then that's their right. Then it graduates into really deviant criminal stuff, and I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. But then I guess that's who gravitates toward power. What percentage? And I've asked this of a lot of people in Washington. What percentage are gay versus pedophiles versus heterosexual, and are there more pedos in either party, Wayne, or how does this work?
Well, I think you're right. I think it's the ones who wake up in the morning and start yelling and screaming about gay rights. What do? They live and breathe this every day. They're usually the ones that are caught. These people, they have a problem. And 9 times out of 10, we were talking about Miss South Carolina, Lindsey Graham. There's a perfect example where everybody in South Carolina knows about him, but yet he's the first one to stand up on the soapbox and talk about how, we can't have same-sex marriage and all these other things. So I think, I do recall that one person back in the early 80s who was going to be censured by the House for running a callboy service allegedly out of his basement of his townhouse said, look, you go after me. I'm going to right now name 25% of the House members I know. And this is back then, so it was different kind of mindset.
That's Barney Frank on the House floor.
That was Barney Frank. Right, exactly. And they were mostly Republicans he was talking about. So obviously there was no interest in pursuing that to any sort of...
Well, that's my issue, though. They don't indict him, but they indict Hastert. Is this then, do you think, or do you know, a war, a blackmail war to get the Republicans to go along with stuff? Because they don't need to. The Republicans are doing whatever they're told.
Well, I'm afraid that with all the powers that NSA has to do fishnet trawling of mega data, bulk data, that this is the type of thing that can result from that they go on fishing expeditions, and if they find... Remember, they got Hastert really for failing to report currency transactions. He first he took out $50,000 from bank accounts, and then he kept it under the $10,000 threshold. If you go over 10,000, there's an automatic report made under federal banking regulations to the federal government, to the IRS and others. But if NSA is trolling everybody's bank accounts and transactions, email, what have you, they can get this information. So I'm wondering whether we're going to see a lot more of this because of the NSA power to eavesdrop. Yet some of these congressmen that are in jeopardy and extremists are the biggest supporters of expanded NSA wiretapping and collection powers.
And what was it our guest said yesterday, Joel Skousen? Evil always carries with it the seeds of its own destruction. And it's crazy. Yeah, these guys do what destroys them. They dig a pit for us, and then they fall into it.
Right. They're not thinking ahead. That's for sure, because they're the ones that have the most to lose. Because even after they leave Congress, what happens? They become lobbyists in many cases for foreign governments. That stuff is all fair game for the NSA.
That's right. Once they work for a foreign government, it's open to be spied on.
Absolutely.
Well, that's another thing. How does Hillary take money from dictators at the State Department through her foundation to then let them have billion-dollar weapon systems? That is just so over the top, cut and dry.
Right. And look, she even took money from the FIFA, the World Cup sponsoring organization. They, of course, indicted several officials.
See, what is that about? I mean, you've got just incredible crime going on all over the country, banks laundering hundreds of billions, running the aircraft, running white slavery rings, and they're going to harass the soccer commission.
Yeah. No banker was indicted as a result of that settlement that announced by the new Attorney General, Loretta Lynch.
But yeah, $5.8 billion to steal trillions.
Right, they go after non-U.S. citizens are going to extradite them to the United States. I think that has to do with the fact in 2018 Russia is going to be the host of the World Cup, and Palestine recently asked FIFA to expel Israel because Israel has interfered with the Palestinian FIFA team's ability to play soccer in their home territory. So it may be some retaliation against FIFA for that. And I wouldn't put that past this administration. After all, what we've seen them do in rattling the sabers against Russia and now China, I don't know. Obama, if he doesn't have much to do before he leaves office, he ought to just identify all the neocons that stayed in this administration from the past one and fire the lot of them, get rid of all of them, because they're putting this country and the world in jeopardy as a result of these policies.
Well, Putin is coming out and saying that it's basically to screw up their hosting the World Cup. And that's really what this all comes down to, is a war on Russia. And again, I don't lionize Putin, but I'm not into starting fights. And the West and Soros is starting the fight, and then Soros has the nerve to run around and whine and go, don't start World War III, when he's bragging on Fareed Zakaria on CNN that he, quote, basically toppled Ukraine.
Yeah, Soros sees a way to make money if there's a war with China or Russia. He's now trying to overthrow the government of Macedonia the same way he did it in Ukraine. And that playing around with the Balkans. Remember what happened 101 years ago in the Balkans? Sarajevo, assassination.
World War I.
World War I, the war that they said war to end all wars. Of course, it wasn't. But that's why this guy Soros needs to be put in a straitjacket and in a place like Hannibal Lecter, where he.
Well, he's beyond exactly how comic book bad guys are one thing. And when I grew up, I thought there's nobody really like this until I started. Soros, I mean, a weirdo Nazi collaborator, 87 years old, involved toppling governments, trying to put radical Islamists to control the Middle East, trying to. I mean, he is a horrible person.
He's the perfect James Bond villain. I don't know which one he would be, whether it be Blofeld or Goldfinger or Carver, but he's probably a mixture of all of them put together. But his name is Georgie Schwartz. He adopted George Soros. It's spelled backwards and forwards the same way. God, Ian Fleming missed out on this guy as a villain.
Let's get into ISIS. We got one more segment. I really appreciate your time. Wayne Madsen, investigative journalist who broke the Hastert news. Gosh, 9 years ago. That's up on Infowars.com. Spread that around. Flashback investigative journalist broke ex-speaker Hastert's blackmail sex scandal in 2006. Read the excerpts there. Wayne, ISIS, I mean, this is so naked. How's it going for ISIS? How's it going for Saudi Arabia? And can they keep it hidden from the public that NATO's running the whole deal?
Well, the group Judicial Watch managed to get a hold of this declassified Defense Intelligence Agency message, which basically, from 2012, it states that the Western powers, the Gulf states and Turkey, should all support these radical Syrian groups to bring down Assad. They talked about who they were: Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which became ISIL or ISIS, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the other Syrian rebel group.
They call it the Salafist or the
Salafists. Yes, thank you. The Salafists, and they're basically Wahhabis who toe the Saudi Wahhabist line. So here we have proof that the U.S.